We've tossed that task to our floor show traders. They are ready to reveal. I want to get to Phil Flynn first. Tell me, because they have made it very clear that unless they start to see very hot inflation or some incredible burst of energy from the entire global economy, which is somewhat unlikely, they're going to be hands off, right? So what's the trade?
They are. Well, I think the trade is to be long just about everything. I mean, it's a little hard to see that right now with the Fed being as accommodative as they are. I think particularly in our sectors that we follow here very closely, energy, precious metals, you've already seen them move up quite a bit when it comes to the anticipation that the Fed is going to be more dovish for some period of time. But also take a look at the housing sector. If you look at the entire economy, the sector that has struggled the most really has been the housing sector. A big part of that was because the expectation that the Fed was going to be very, very hawkish, that they were going to keep raising rates, and that sort of froze a lot of that activity. But if you get the sense right now that we're going to see the Fed back off a little bit and rates aren't going to go through the roof, that could actually stir some housing activity and actually get some of these building companies to really start ramping up here. So this could be a real good thing.
Yeah, 30-year fixed, by the way, and I always look at this because I know a lot of people want to hear about the mortgage rates. 30-year fixed rate, 4.66%. Just remember that last week at 4.65%, it was the lowest in 10 months. So we started to see exactly what Phil talked about, a spark in mortgage activity. Let me get to Larry Shover. Give us your sense of the best places. Phil mentions metals. I don't know if anybody can pull up palladium, and I'm not getting wonky here, but palladium is the metal that helps catalytic converters convert, big in autos. It just hit an all-time high. But go ahead, Larry, with your thought.
Yeah, my thoughts, like with the real rates growth gap being as wide as it is, meaning how much you get from government bonds minus inflation versus stocks, I go for like overweighting cyclicals like the miners and energy. Both of those sectors, by and large, the relative value to the S&P 500 is still trading at a discount. And even if the economy muddles along, as 30-year JGBs, Boons, and U.S. 30-year Treasuries are pointing to, those should do well, all things considered.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but you got to be very careful with the U.S. dollar, which is what you said. You see a dollar peak for the greenback, right? Because when you don't have an active Fed, people go into more, I suppose, risky assets, right, Matt Cheslock? And so the U.S. dollar is sort of that safe haven, doesn't really come into play, it seems.
No, I think the U.S. dollar is in a range here right now, as long as the Fed is going to be pretty dormant, as you mentioned. But as far as equities go, you look at the move today, we really sold off, not after the Fed announcement, but the possible EU tariffs. That's when the market came in today. We rallied back. We have a benign Fed here right now. But, the Powell pivot, does he pivot the other way at some point? Based on what we're seeing, some data. If we're data dependent, we're not just looking at unemployment. We're not just looking at GDP. We start looking at other things like this retail sale that we saw, retail number that we saw last week. This Fed could become more active quicker than we had hoped.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I just want to let our viewers know that for me, when I looked at all of these headlines, there were a whole bunch of them coming from the Federal Reserve minutes from the most recent meeting. Here's the one that jumped out. Several participants said they see further rate hikes appropriate this year, 2019, if the economy evolves as expected. There it is on the screen. So watch out for that one. I think Matt makes a good point. Good to see all of you guys. Thank you. Matt, Larry, Phil, our floor show buddies.